Hi, my name is Jordan. I am a special education teacher from the UK. I share my passion for everything communication, sensory regulation and fun lesson ideas for my classroom of disabled pupils aged 4 to 11. Each week, I am joined by experts in the field, answering your questions and sharing our knowledge and experience working alongside our beautiful young people. Let's get started. Everybody, welcome to another live. Let's start with your question. How to manage stripping in public places in school if there are no visuals? Great question. And it's a question I get a lot actually about stripping. It's really, really common. So yeah, this is for the podcast. So I have seen this before in my last school, and a really easy solution is to put coats on backwards. So the zips at the back or the Velcros at the back or the buttons that are back. That's a really easy solution as to stop the stripping, or maybe their school cardigan or whatever is backwards. And there's also special clothing that you can purchase that has hard to open poppers or zips, again, that are often at the back, so that even if children can open it, it kind of slows them down a little bit so that you can then stop them. So that's all well and good. But also I would look at why the reason why they're doing it, because that helps that's the solution to what they're doing, the behaviour, but it doesn't actually solve the why. So I would ask why they're stripping. You know, what are they getting out of that? I once spoke to an occupational therapist that explained that some children's skin is as sensitive as an eyeball. And that's never lost me. I've never forgotten that, because my goodness, if my skin was as sensitive as an eyeball, I wouldn't want my hair cut or shaved. I wouldn't want to be wearing clothes with itchy labels or weird fabrics. You know, I'd want to be wearing soft, smooth, silky fabrics with no seam, with no labels, you know. So maybe, even if their skin isn't as sensitive as an eyeball, because I'm sure lots of people aren't, even if they do have sensory regulation needs, but let's assume that it is, because we don't know that it isn't, and then maybe talk to parents about if there's alternative uniform they could wear that's a little bit more soft or silky or doesn't have the seams or take labels out and all those kind of things. So maybe that's why they're stripping. It also could be they love the reaction, or it's a good opt-out, because if they don't want to do their work and then they strip, well, obviously you're not just going to say, look, get on with your work and ignore that behaviour. Obviously you're going to take them away, take them to the bathroom and get them changed. So it could be a learn opt-out as well. So think about the why and go from there. But yeah, clothing is a good reason to not strip. It's a full body strip, unfortunately. We put a blanket over, but this doesn't work. I think the young person gets a reaction, which is why, yeah, of course, if you're running over and having blankets and it's, you know, maybe they're wanting that kind of interaction. So if that is the why, then also embed opportunities to positively interact throughout their day. It could be intensive interaction, it could be as simple as that, or it could be some kind of turn-taking games, wrestling. Maybe they want that kind of swaddle with a blanket. Give them opportunities to do that isn't stripping, if that is what it is. The young person also gets hot very often. Yeah, that's so common. So lots of children with sensory regulation, especially if they have interoception, regulation difficulties, they will really struggle with regulating their temperature. So maybe having a fan, or having an opportunity to ask for lots of drinks or a cold flannel, and other ways of cooling down, or asking for clothes to be, off without them all being off. And sometimes with autistic children particularly, it can be all or nothing. So just giving them a structured way of showing them, jump off, wait, you might cool down, you might not need to take everything off. And lots of games like that, maybe through attention autism or role play. We could modelling hot and then cold and go that way. So yeah, it could be an understanding. There's lots of reasons why a child could be stripping, but those are lots of them. So I hope that helps. Yeah, I hope that's a useful answer for you. The next question is from Diane, and she says, how do you manage self-harming behaviours in younger students? I have seen lots of self-harming behaviours before. Again, there can be lots of different reasons why they're self-harming. Sometimes it can be they really want grounding. It's a really great way of getting that a sense of self. is through hurting yourself, because if I didn't know where my body was in space, say if I've got poor proprioception needs, then if I'm biting myself or hitting myself, then I definitely know where my body is. I definitely know where my legs are. I definitely know where my hands are, because I'm getting that feedback, or my head is because I'm headbutting or biting or whatever it is. There's no, more stronger feedback that I exist in the world and I know where my body is and grounded than that. And usually that is the way, and usually it stems from a feeling of feeling completely dysregulated, in fight or flight mode, really anxious, really frustrated, lack of communication, and loads of frustration and demand usually is where those self-harming behaviours come in. Sometimes also, and I have got this as well, self-harming behaviours start like that, but then become a learnt behaviour to opt out or communicate that they want something. And all of a sudden when they self-harm, I've got a little girl who punches herself in the head, and I think that started by her wanting to ground herself. I think she genuinely needs that when she's frustrated. However, what she then learned was, when I do this, adults come running to me and fix my problem. So what was happening, it was a very small problem. She just wanted a blanket, or she just was slightly frustrated that the chair wasn't with her, or she was slightly frustrated that she couldn't have crisps straight away, slight annoyances. She was really punching herself in the head, because that was what she'd learned. If I want help, if I need help from an adult or want help to access something, I need to do that, because that's the quickest way they will come to me. And that was learnt. So the hardest thing that we had to do for that one was react slower to the punching and react faster to anything safe. So if she was reaching for something or giving some vocalizations or looking at something, we needed to react super fast to that and give her it straight away. If she was punching herself, we needed to react a bit slower, get her blanket and give her squeezes a bit slower, so that she's learned. And within a year, it's taken a year, but within the year now, she has learnt, if I want something, I have to reach for it. And she still sometimes does this, but she doesn't punch herself. She just does, I will. But now we know that, now she knows, actually, when I want something, actually it's much quicker for me at school to just reach for it or look for it. So that's really great for her. But often self-harming behaviours come from frustration, and that often comes from a lack of ways to communicate or be understood. I mean, think about how frustrating it is to know what you want, not be able to have the words to ask for it, and not be understood, and only have your body to communicate. I think I would be hitting myself or other people or other things. That's incredibly frustrating. So let's give them some communication. Let's offer them iPads. Let's offer them symbols, photos, objects of reference, sound buttons, signing. Let's offer all of that to them, because something might stick and it might help them understand or be understood. And all of a sudden, even though we've not dealt with the actual self-harming behaviour, all of a sudden there's no need to self-harm, because they can be understood. The anxiety is reduced. They know that they're heard, and they know what other people are saying, and they can communicate their wants and wishes as well. And all of a sudden they're not self-harming anymore. And that, I know you've said for younger students, but actually that goes all the way through. Everybody deserves a voice. Everybody deserves to be heard and understood. And if we want to reduce those self-harming behaviours, then communication has to be first. And then second is sensory regulation. So what are the demands on them at the time? Is it a busy environment? Are the lights on? Is it noisy? Is it cluttered? What demands are you putting on them? Are you asking too much of them at this moment? Yes, they might be able to have done it yesterday, but today's a new day, and actually they're feeling particularly anxious or out of sorts today, and it's just too much. And is that why they're self-harming? So just have a look at the environment as well, and think about how you can reduce those demands. Because ultimately, we don't want any students to be self-harming. So we want to reduce that. How do you know what sensory output they need in the moment? So it's a really great question, Shawnee. I have what's called a sensory profile tool on my website. I can link it I'll link it on here afterwards when I save this. And it breaks down all of the senses. So we've got the 5 senses, haven't we, that we know about. We've got sight, smell, touch, taste and hearing. Nearly forgot the 5. So they're the 5 that we are all taught about in school, but there's actually 3 more. We've got proprioception. So proprioception is letting us know where our body is, even if we're not looking at our limbs. So I know where my hand is, even though I can't see it. I just know where it is. I've got a feeling about where it is, and that helps us feel positioned in our bodies and positioned in the world. Well, lots of children with proprioception difficulties, and it's really common with children with autism and Down syndrome, any fine motor thing, cerebral palsy, all have really, really tricky proprioception regulation needs, and they don't really know where their body is. So that's why you might see lots of self-harming behaviours. It might be lots of tiptoe walking. That might be why you see flapping or rocking or stamping or laying on the floor or wiggling in their chairs. I'm trying not to describe your daughter too much, Shawnee. But all of those things, wanting to swing, wanting to be upside down, all of those things are telling your child, this is where my body is in the world, in the space. It makes me feel grounded. So they might have some difficulties there. The 7th one is vestibular. So that is your sense of balance. So these children either seek or avoid going upside down. So if they've got a heightened sense of vestibular, if they are vestibular avoiding, it might be because they're a bit unsteady on their feet and they're scared of tipping up or over. So these children are nervous about walking upstairs. They'd avoid swings or seesaws. They even get scared like sitting back on their chair because they're really nervous about that kind of movement. We've got some children like that at school. We've also got some children that are vestibular seeking, and these are your children that want to be upside down all of the time and swung around and on the swing and thrown up in the air and all those kind of children, and they are your vestibular seekers because they are seeking that dizziness, or they don't even get dizzy, but they're seeking that spinning. And Shawnee, your daughter, is certainly like that too. I've seen that for sure. And then the 8th sense is called interoception, the internal sense. So this would be the sense that makes you know if you're poorly or thirsty or hungry or hot or cold. It's that gut sense, and it helps us regulate our temperature and regulate our internal self. So lots of children also on the spectrum will struggle with that too, knowing when they're too hot, when they're too cold. I wouldn't say that your daughter does though, Shawnee. Actually, she's pretty good with that. Yeah, so through your question, how do you know what sensory output they need in those moments? It's about understanding if they are oversensitive to each of those 8 senses or undersensitive, and you can be over in some and under in others and completely regulated in others. So it's about creating a profile for your children about that, and then having a look at it once you've got it and thinking, okay, so they're seeking vestibular, but they're avoiding this, and they're seeking taste, strong taste, but they're avoiding loud noises, and coming up with a profile about what they need ultimately. But really, it won't surprise you, because you'll say, oh yeah, they're upside down all the time. Or, oh yeah, they constantly are seeking strong flavours and smells. Yeah, they do that. Because ultimately your children know what, they don't know why, but they know to seek those things or know to avoid those things. They're naturally doing it anyway. And parents amongst you and teachers that have worked with your children for a while will certainly be able to know, oh yeah, they always eat bland food, or they always hate noise, or are really noisy, or whatever. And that's about their sensory profile. So yeah, if you are interested in your own sensory profile or a child's sensory profile, my sensory profiling tool is really useful. It's £10 on my website, and it takes you through, really, it's quite thorough, but it takes you through step by step about what each sense is, whether you're seeking or over or under responsive to it, what that means. It helps you profile your children on a really easy grid. You literally just do a tick or a cross, whether they are or aren't, haven't got it. And then it takes you through step by step. If your child is this, then you need to do this. If your child is this, then you need to do this. and it supports children from kind of toddlers right through to adulthood, really. So yeah, if you're interested in sensory output and input and how to support, then that is a great start. Often it's the second thing that I recommend that people get. The first one is intensive interaction training, just because I think it just works with everyone and it's only £5, so I often send them that. The sensory diet poster, again, it's £1, so I often send people that. And then the third thing, I think the best thing that I've ever created, even though I barely talk about it, is this sensory profiling tool, because it's the start, it's the key to unlocking all those things. There's no point having a wonderful curriculum or a wonderful core word program that you're running if your children aren't regulated. And that's what this sensory profile will hopefully support you to understand and support them with. So I hope that answers your question, Shawnee. Next question, and keep leaving questions as well. I'll answer the questions in the chat and on here as well, the ones that I asked you in the broadcast channel. The next question, how can we stop a child from spitting on people and hurting others? Well, it's similar to the self-harming one, really. But I feel like self-harming is you wanting adults to come to you, whereas spitting and hurting others, well, it's the opposite, isn't it? You're wanting people to go away. And a really effective way of making people want to go away is by hurting them or spitting on them, because naturally people, avoid you for that. So the easy answer is give them an I need the break button or an I need the break symbol. Give them a symbol so that they can ask for a break and honour it. Even if it looks like they're avoiding work, let them have their break, because they probably do need it. And then they can always come back to finish their work task. Let them have the break if they're asking for it, because we'd rather that and them have the break when they need it. We'd rather that than them spitting and hurting each other's or throwing their work or whatever the alternative is. They're going to find ways to avoid work if they want to avoid it. So we'd rather them do it in an appropriate way. I want a break. Brilliant. You want a break? Great. Go and have your break, for a countdown timer or some kind of limitation. Do one puzzle and then come back, whatever it is. And then bring them back to the work task, and then they complete their work task and carry on. Yeah, so if they're spitting or hurting others, I would be offering them a safe, quiet, intense-free, clutter-free environment to escape to. It might be that they go under the table with a blanket over it and then they come back out and then they're ready to do their work again. It might be that they need a bit of a run around in the playground or a bit of a sensory circuit instead of a quiet break. You know your children. But yeah, I really believe that if they are having the breaks that they need, then they won't feel the need to spit or hurt others. I suppose the alternative also could be that they wanting to interact and they quite like the reaction of other people, hurt and spitting, and that's the only time they ever get an interaction from somebody else. Even though it's negative, it's quite a fun one to them because they don't get a positive interaction with other children. They don't really know how to do it. So another way would be to set up some kind of intervention group of teaching them how to interact with children more appropriately, maybe a Lego therapy group or equivalent, and supporting them to join a group and how to initiate a play in that way, I suppose. Right, so they're your questions that you asked on the broadcast group. Is there any more questions that you wanted to answer or anything that you wanted to chat about? I've got some more questions here. I'm just going to keep chatting and you guys write your questions in the comments as I chat. So Nicola has asked, why is repetition so beneficial for learners with complex needs? And I love this question because I'm always hammering on about the fact that I repeat everything. So I repeat my lessons every week for 6 weeks, or I repeat the core word program every day, or I repeat attention autism every day for a week. I'm always hammering on about repeating things. And there are lots of reasons. It's a really good question. Often with global delay or developmental delay or disabilities, your working memory struggles to remember something right off the bat. Often they need to repeat it in order for the new learning to be embedded. So if you've got if you're working with a child with poor working memory or short-term memory, then it will need to be repeated to consolidate that learning. So that's the first reason. Another reason is often children with autism or children in special education or mainstream or with a one-to-one for any reason often have anxiety. It's kind of part and parcel of having the disability and living in a world that isn't, you know, built for you or how you learn and how you like to be. Often anxiety comes as part of that. So if you're repeating learning, then it boosts their confidence because it becomes predictable, it becomes routine. The anxiety is reducing and therefore you can really see what they're capable of. If I was only going to do an activity once and then another activity once and then another activity once, my children and my class will be in a constant state of anxiety and unknowing, and it'll feel unpredictable, it'll feel unfamiliar, and they won't really know what it's about. So even though they could perfectly do it well, they don't know what I'm asking them to do at first. So they can't show me what they're really capable of. Whereas if I'm repeating it every week for 6 weeks, week 1 is just watching me and thinking, this is weird, what's this all about? Week 2 is, oh yeah, I remember that from last week. Yeah, okay, this feels a little bit more familiar. By week 3, they might be actually having a turn. So it's taken 3 weeks for them to even have a turn. And then they can improve on those skills. And by week 6, they're doing it, they're independent, they're modelling. I'm really seeing what they're capable of and they're really progressing and learning. That's why I repeat the lessons. Also, there's another benefit. It means I only have to plan once every 6 weeks or once every 12, which is a huge benefit because that means I can spend all those hours with the children, engaging with the children, creating the most amazing resources. And that's another thing as well. If I'm using the resources every week for 6 weeks, it means my budget is way bigger. Because otherwise I'd have to buy a new thing or make a new thing every week or every day or every lesson, you know. That would be huge cost to resources and my time. Whereas this means I can buy a few amazing resources that we can repeat and use over all of that time. In my last school, I used to teach 6 lessons a day, every day, and we used to change the topic every week. It's crazy. I used to do 36 lessons a week. And we used to change the topic every week, like completely new topic. The amount of resources and time that took was crazy in comparison to the progress that the children did or didn't make, basically. So it was huge. And I don't see any benefit from that at all. Do you think a chiropractor can help with self-regulating to become more relaxed and calm? Because I'm going to start sessions for Henderson with them. I've heard of some really, really, really great results from chiropractor. Yeah, from you going to a chiropractor. So yeah, I don't understand why or how, but I know chiropractors swear by that it's way more than just spine health. It's way more about health, well-being, mental health, all of those things. So why not give it a go? Yeah, if you're willing to give it a go, yeah, let's try it. I'd love to hear what you... Funny, I was going to say, does she even get dizzy? That's brilliant. I had no idea about the other 3 senses. Thank you. She's been on the spinning chair since she's been home from school. So this is a child that's in my class, and I hope you don't mind me saying, Shawnee, she goes onto this fish seat. I think you've seen it on my account. Spins. She spins so fast. She has little pigtails, and the pigtails are out wide, and she is spinning like this. It's so fast. And she stops, just gets up, not dizzy, and just carries on with her day. Like, it's amazing. But my goodness, yes, that is vestibular seeking. I've never known a child to spin that fast and not get dizzy. So, yeah, definitely a vestibular seeker. I'll send it to you, Shawnee. Yeah, no problem. Do you use a sound timer for a break? I don't typically. I often use a countdown, mainly because I don't like to determine how long it's going to take a child before they need to come back to me. For example, if I say, okay, take 3 minutes and then come back, or what if actually they're not quite ready in 3 minutes, or what if they're ready after a minute and a half? What if they go and do a sensory circuit and actually they, like, completion is a really important thing, especially for people with an autistic profile. They need to complete an activity before it's finished, otherwise it feels unfinished and uncertain and unstable and I'm not ready to finish it. If that sound timer finishes and the activity isn't finished, like they haven't completed their rotation of the obstacle course, or they haven't completed their puzzle, or they haven't completed their iPad game, that is gonna be dysregulation. And we're in the, regulating children. So I use a countdown. It's basically just 3 symbols that we gradually take off, and they will not take that last one off until I feel like, you know, the things come to an end or they're ready, basically. So it helps them. We work alongside each other, and we kind of negotiate in that way as when a good time to finish is. And that's whether it's a preferred activity or a non-preferred activity. We kind of work together and work out, you know, how it's going to work. How is the introduction to that break if you haven't had it before? Yeah, great question. So often I just model it. If I feel like they need a break, I get the symbol and I say, I need a break. And then I bring them with me. It might just be really small, and I do something that I know they'll love. It could be bouncing on exercise ball, spinning on a chair, jumping up and down, whatever it is, something that I know they really, really, really want to do. They'll join me with it, and then we'll go back to class. 5 minutes later, because this is the real learning here, I don't actually care about the learning. The lesson is I'm teaching them how to get asked for a break. 5 minutes, I'll say, I need a break. And then we go back again and we do that really fun activity, maybe even a different fun activity. And then we come back. And then, third time, I might just leave it there. And they might point to it or look to it or grab it. Or I might just say, I need a break. And then we go out again. And eventually they will understand, when I want to do that thing, I just have to hold this and I can get it. Just know, though, that it isn't a treat. Lots of people say, oh, you're just rewarding them for not doing their work. No. These children need sensory breaks, like they need water or air or blinking. And we treat it as such. We wouldn't deny these children the toilet, or we wouldn't deny these children a drink of water when they needed it. We cannot deny these children a sensory break when they need it. Even if we think they're faking it and they're using it as an opt-out, we have to honour that. Let's assume competence. Let's assume that they know what their body needs. And if your lesson was really fun, then they're not going to want to avoid it. So one, maybe just improve your lesson and make it more fun. But also, let them have a sensory break and then come back and finish your lesson later. Like, that's okay. That's perfectly okay. And I know that's the luxury of special education, that we can do that really easily. But I really feel like mainstream can do that too. You know, especially if they're responsible and they can meet their sensory needs on their own in a corner or outside or whatever, and then come back in. Great. How would you know if a child is anxious if they don't speak? You can just tell. They will be fussy about where things are, like an OCD type thing maybe. They will be refusing to move or avoidant. They will be no, or pushing you away. I mean, God, non-speaking children are incredible about communicating their feelings, wants, needs, wishes without any words. They use their body. And you really can tell when they're feeling anxious because their body's all uptight and they're avoiding, or they're hiding, or they're running away, or they're no. And you just can tell when they're anxious. Maybe they're quiet, you know, maybe they're sitting a bit tight, or maybe they're feeling a bit poorly, or they look a bit peaky, or they're crying, or they're hurting themselves. You know, they're all anxious things that I see often. Hurting themselves is the worst one. And that's how I tell if they're anxious. Just like you can tell if they're happy. They're relaxed, they're clapping, their head is up, they're up straight, they're looking, they're smiling, they're seeking more, they're reaching out. That's happiness. That's focused and ready to learn. Well, anxiety is the opposite of that. We'll look for all those other things. Yeah, so I call it the countdown timer. I sell it for £3 on my website. It's a strip. I do have one with me. Let me just go and grab it. So this is a countdown timer. It can be any symbols on it. This is just symbols that this particular child that uses this one really enjoys. And it's got a finish. This is very ratty because we use it all the time. It's got a finished symbol at the bottom. So this is what you will create using my template for £3, and you can change the images to be desirable and preferred and a special interest something for the child. So you'll say 3 left, and then it's time to finish. And then you'll do something, and it might be a couple of seconds, it might be 5 minutes, depending on the activity, whatever. And then you say, and then you give it to them, and they take one off. 2 left, and then finished. And then give them some time, and then 1 left, then finished. And then they often struggle to take the last one off because they know that it's going to finish. When they struggle to take this one off, then you know they understand the concept of it. Off and finished. And then check your schedule, and you might give them a little check schedule visual, and they can go check their schedule, or it's time to finish now. Go but go back to your work task, whatever. And that's really great, because you're not just whipping it away from them. You're not transitioning with no warning. They know that it's coming to an end. And also, you don't offer them this one until the thing they're doing has come to a natural end. Maybe their iPad game is finished, or their puzzle is complete, or they've used all their pens in their tray, or whatever it is. It's really important to them that they are completing the activity. So we kind of negotiate with this one around, when does it feel like a good end? Or you can kind of feel it in their body sometimes that they're coming to a natural end, and now we can move on. And this is a really useful tool. Yeah, that's on my website. You can search countdown set and it will come up. Yeah, exactly. Breaks are not a treat in a mainstream setting, so the breaks seem frivolous to others. Yeah, and often you get funny looks or funny comments saying, well, you're just treating them for misbehaving or avoiding their work. You can just say, no, they need this just like water and air, and I'm meeting that need. And then nothing else needs to be said. That's all you need to say. You don't need to say anything else. Okay, another question. Why is repetition so important for Gestalt language processors? So we've spoke about repetition before, but Gestalt language processors like repeating even more. They will watch the same clip over and over and over again, or they'll play the same game over and over and over again. They are over and over and over again, children. Gestalt language processors. It's because it becomes familiar to them, it becomes predictable to them, because the world and language is so unpredictable and confusing for children that are non-speaking. But all of a sudden, they can latch onto this phrase and they understand its meaning. I want juice could be one, for example. And all of a sudden, when they say it, they get juice, or they get apple juice, or you get choices. This is great. This is awesome. I'm going to keep saying that. I'm going to keep playing it so I can learn it. And then what about this phrase? I need a friend. And then if you keep saying it, and then the friend comes. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. How exciting that they're finding these words and phrases. And they don't learn it by separate words. They learn it with the phrase as a whole. And then gradually they go step by step and gradually mitigate the phrase, and then they can use it as separate words. It's incredibly exciting. It's an incredible way of learning language. I love it. I love working with Gestalt language processors. We've got a good few in my class, and it's so interesting and exciting. I've got a free blog post on my website all about the stages, because there's 5 or 6 stages of Gestalt language processing. From echolalia, so immediate echoing exactly what they hear at the time, and then working through it. Stage 2 is delayed echolalia, so they're repeating exactly the phrase, but they're doing it not immediately afterwards. They're doing it other times in the day, and then they're learning using it into context, and it goes through. Really exciting. And eventually, after stage 6 and onwards, they are at a typically developmental stage of speech. They catch up, which is so exciting. Yeah, I find Gestalt language processors incredible, and it's why I wrote my core word program, and it motivates lots of things I do actually. And it could also be stimming. It's why they repeat. It's enjoyable, it's funny, it makes me feel good. Stimming literally means repetitive stimulating behaviour. Anything they repeat and is stimulating to them could be a stim. It could be something like this, it could be something like this, it could be something like this, or it could be repeating on the iPad is stimming, and it's just because it feels good. It makes them feel good, and it's regular, and it's consistent, and it's predictable, and it just makes me feel good. So that's why Gestalt language processors repeat. Shawnee, you're so lovely. Hope you're so amazing. Your explanations and everything is just on point. Need more Jordans in this world. Well, that's my mission. My mission is to share all of this stuff, because there are a lot of children out there, and there's more children than I can have access to, hands-on access to. I've only got 10 spaces in my class, and it just feels very unfair. So if I can share some of my knowledge to other practitioners or parents, caregivers, so that a little bit can also go to them, then it makes me feel a little bit more comforted, because there's so much need out there, and I wish I could work with everyone. I really, really do. I really do. Oh, I love this question. Down syndrome students struggle with simple instructions to stand or sit. Yes, I can just imagine it. I've worked with lots of Down syndrome students. Could it be a gross motor thing? So typically Down syndrome students, and they're not the only ones, children with cerebral palsy as well, and sometimes autism, struggle with a lack of proprioception feedback because they're hypermobile. And they're your children that, can bend their thumbs all the way back, or like put their feet like all the way up over their head, or they often sit in the Y position, like this. They kind of sit like that. They're like really hypermobile. These children often struggle with proprioception feedback because they don't know where their body is in space, because their body is kind of everywhere. They're not getting that sensation of limitations with their body. So they often struggle with proprioception feedback. So they often also struggle to sit because they don't feel comforted or grounded by sitting. They still kind of feel a bit floaty. I often liken it to feeling a bit drunk. Like if you've had about too much alcohol, I mean, people tell me that if you have enough alcohol and you lie down, then you feel like the room's spinning, and you often like have to touch the wall as you're walking because you feel like, it's a bit spinny, or maybe you put your foot out of bed so it touches the floor just so that you know where the ground is, because the world feels a little bit spinny. That's honestly how I think a lot of people with proprioception needs, regulation needs, feel all of the time, which is why you see the flapping, the rocking, the tiptoe walking. Often you'll see, if you watch, autistic children will run their hand along the wall as they're walking, or they'll be a little bit more stompy with their feet, or they'll be a bit more jumpy because they're trying to seek that grounding, just like when you're feeling a little bit inebriated. So naturally these children will struggle to sit. So I try a weighted blanket. They are incredibly effective, again, for that grounding, so they know where their body is in space. They feel grounded and settled in their seat. This could be a big weighted blanket or sometimes a lap blanket. And also deep pressure squeeze as well. Anybody that's ever met me will know that I'm constantly squeezing your children, and it's often down their arms, it's often on your head, so front and back, or it's down their legs, and it's their feet. Often I go for hands and feet as well. And when I'm with children, I'm constantly squeezing their hands and squeezing their feet because it just settles them. They don't need to flap and jump and rock and run around and be a bit chaotic. They can just settle in the moment because I'm giving them that feedback in that same space. So deep pressure squeezes is a great one. For Down syndrome children not sitting, it could also be processing time. Often with children with any disability or cognitive impairment, they need extra processing time to process what you've said. So you need to allow at least 8 seconds, ideally 10, before repeating an instruction, or even better, just go visual and don't say anything at all. It's far more easy to understand visual than spoken. So it might be something like, Tommy, sit down. Tommy, sit down. How often do we actually wait 8 seconds? It feels like a really long time, doesn't it? But it's essential. And I always liken it, or kind of visualize it like rolling a ball to them and hoping they catch it. So me saying, Tommy, sit down, is me rolling a ball and hoping they catch it. But it takes 8 seconds for the ball to reach them. And if I say, Tommy, sit down, here's your chair, sit down, go on. Like, I'm not being mean, I'm being really kind. But I rolled about 5 balls to Tommy, and he doesn't know which ones to catch, which ones to drop. He can't catch all of them. And it's like things are going to get missed, especially the main, meaning of the instruction. So wait 8 seconds for the ball, the instruction ball, to reach them before repeating. And even better, go visual first. Autistic children, especially, are incredibly visual. So why are we giving instructions in a neurotypical way? We need to be giving instructions in a neurodivergent way. And that's visual first. So it might not be saying anything. Then maybe modelling what you want them to be doing. Another visual way is modelling. And then you might go and say to them. I also only give instructions if I'm within arm reach of them. Any longer than that, it just feels like shouting and a demand, and neither of us like that. So be an arm's reach away from them, give them processing time, go visual first, give them proprioception feedback, and then ultimately, people with Down syndrome are often just quite stubborn. It's really common. So try a change of pace, try and switch out with another adult, try and make it a little bit more fun, reduce the demands, give them opportunities to control the activity or choose the activity. Quite typical and similar to the students kind of on with a PDA profile as well. That's pathological demand avoidance profile. I use the PANDA approach for that, and I posted about that on the broadcast channel. Is there any more questions that you've got for me? I've been chatting away for 45 minutes now, and I feel like I've gotten through quite a lot of questions, but I'm sure there's more. It can be about anything. I hope you guys are all settling into your classes well, and you're getting to know your children now. So we're a good few weeks in now. We're at week 5, I think, aren't we? So hopefully you're feeling a little bit more settled. You know where you are with your children. You've got some targets in mind. You know where you're at. You know, you feel a little bit grounded in your space as well, because those first 3 weeks are a little bit hairy, aren't they? Because you're still getting to know everything, and they're also settling. You might have new staff to train, new classroom that isn't quite ready or whatever. So hopefully by week 5 you're feeling a little bit more prepared and a little bit more ready. I really hope so. Right, if there's no more questions for me, then hang on, I've got a speech bubble one. I didn't check that. Oh no, we've already answered that one. Okay, yeah. I'll finish there then. Thank you so much for being subscribers. You are literally supporting my classroom by doing this, which is so wonderful. It's making such a difference to my class. We're currently saving up for an AAC app so that we can use it with some of our new learners. So yeah, it's every pound is appreciated. So thank you so much for subscribing. It blows my mind how many of you there are, and it's so kind. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Let's have a look. I'm just gonna have a look who I'm talking to next week. I'm talking to SPD Tuition and Coaching. So if you want to look her up to find a little bit more, but yeah, she's a coach about sensory needs. So that will be hopefully really helpful. We're going to be talking to her about that. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.